What if I told you that the secret to getting incredible results, a total transformation, doesn't come from some huge life-altering change? What if it's actually something way, way smaller? We're going to dig into the surprising power of just 1%.
And to really see this idea in action, we've got to talk about one of the wildest turnarounds in the history of sports. Our story starts with the British cycling team, a group that was, well, let's just say they were kind of a running joke for a long, long time.
Just let that sink in for a second. An entire century of nothing. They were so consistently mediocre that one of the biggest bike companies in Europe actually refused to sell bikes to the team because they were afraid it would make their brand look bad. I mean, that's how low they were.
So that's the big question, right? How does a team with 100 years of failure under its belt suddenly become the most successful team in modern cycling? How do they just start dominating the Tour de France, the Olympics, everything? The answer wasn't one big thing. It was 1,000 tiny things.
Okay, so in 2003, the organization brings in a new guy, a performance director named Dave Brailsford. And he had this philosophy that was so simple it almost sounded ridiculous. But the results, they were anything but. He called it the aggregation of marginal gains.
Brailsford's team started hunting for a 1% improvement in absolutely everything they could think of. Yeah, they started with the obvious stuff, better bike seats, lighter tires, but then they went further, like way further, into areas nobody else was even thinking about. They tested different massage gels. They found the perfect pillow for each rider to get better sleep. They even taught them the most effective way to wash their hands so they wouldn't get sick. Seriously, no detail was too small.
And this right here is the whole idea in a nutshell. Brailsford was convinced that if you could just find a tiny 1% improvement in every little thing you do, all those small gains would compound and add up to this massive boost in performance. He actually predicted it would take them 5 years to win the Tour de France. He was wrong. They did it in 3.
This visual just shows you the power of it so perfectly. That 1% improvement every day, it might not feel like much at first, but over time, look at that blue line, it just shoots for the sky. But the scary thing is, the reverse is also true. A tiny 1% decline, just a few small slip-ups each day, and that red line plummets. The gap between those two paths becomes absolutely enormous.
So, how enormous are we talking? Well, if you get just 1% better every single day for 1 year, you end up almost 38 times better than you were when you started. That's the mind-blowing math of compounding. It's not about one giant leap. It's about all those tiny, consistent steps forward just piling up.
The author Jim Rohn summed it up perfectly with this. Amazing results aren't about the single heroic moments. They're just the sum of all the little choices you make day in and day out to do things just that tiny bit better.
But this whole idea isn't just about adding good things. Let's flip it around and look at an idea that's just as powerful. What if getting better actually means removing the bad stuff instead of just adding more of the good?
Okay, this slide breaks it down so well. Most of us are obsessed with that left column, right? Improvement by addition. We're always chasing that brilliant win. But there's this whole other path, subtraction. This is all about avoiding the dumb mistakes, doing less of the bad work, eating fewer of the unhealthy foods. It's not about getting more home runs. It's about making fewer outs.
And this bell curve shows you exactly how that works. We all want to push that green part of the curve, do more great stuff. But what if we just focused on shrinking the red part, doing less of the bad stuff? By just getting rid of your worst performances and your most common mistakes, you automatically drag your entire average up. You get better just by being less bad.
So this brings us to another huge idea that applies to pretty much everything, from our jobs to our health. We always think we need to go all out, to be super intense all the time. But what if that's actually what's holding us back?
This quote from the British Columbia Medical Journal just nails it. Think about it. If your new workout is just brutal, or a new habit is totally draining, how long are you really going to stick with it? Real progress isn't about one heroic effort, it's about what you can actually keep doing day after day.
A fantastic real-world example of this is something called the Keystone ICU Project. A doctor introduced this dead simple 5-step checklist for a common procedure in hospitals, and the results were just stunning. In 18 months, this basic checklist saved over 1,500 lives and $75 million. And here's the kicker. This wasn't some brand new medical breakthrough. Every single doctor already knew these 5 steps. They were complete no-brainers. The checklist didn't teach them anything new. It just forced them to do what they already knew worked every single time. Consistency was the miracle cure.
So how can we make being consistent easier in our own lives? Well, the secret is to become an architect of your choices. It's about setting up your environment so that the good habits are the easiest thing to do.
Take a look at this list. Does any of this sound a little familiar? If your phone is charging right next to your bed, grabbing it first thing in the morning becomes the default. If the junk food is sitting on the counter, you're probably going to grab it. These are defaults that make bad habits feel effortless.
Now let's flip it. By making tiny little tweaks to our environment, we can create positive defaults. A water bottle on your desk makes staying hydrated easy. Putting floss right next to your toothbrush removes that little bit of friction. Laying out your workout clothes the night before, again, one less excuse. You're not relying on willpower anymore. You're just making the good choice the path of least resistance.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? That real, lasting success isn't some single event. It's a process. It's the sum of all those tiny gains. It's the wisdom of getting rid of your mistakes. It's choosing to be consistent over being intense. And it's about designing your world so the right choice is the easy choice. Which really just leaves us with one final, and maybe the most important question to ask ourselves.